Hey guys, tonight we step into a world where you'd rather stay asleep than live a day awake. You open your eyes, and the first thing you notice isn't the light, there's barely any of that. It's the smell. It hits you like a slap. A thick, soupy blend of rotting wood, damp straw, old sweat, and something suspiciously close to raw sewage. You're lying on what passes for a mattress, just a burlap sack stuffed with moldy hay and probably a few bugs that call your body home now. The room is small, claustrophobic, and made of rough, splintery wood. The walls are so thin you can hear every cough and groan from the next room, which may or may not be someone giving birth or dying of dysentery. It's hard to tell. You try to sit up and immediately regret it. Your back hurts. Everything hurts. Why? Because there's no heating, no pillow, and no mattress support. You're not even on a bed, technically. Just a wooden plank raised off the dirt floor so the rats have to work slightly harder to crawl into your hair at night. You probably won't survive this. Just saying. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Oh, and drop your location plus local time in the comments. Just curious how many of us are time traveling tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in a typical medieval village, somewhere in Western Europe. It's around the year 1350, give or take. You're a commoner, because statistically, that's what you'd be. Peasants made up over 90% of the population. If you were hoping for a noble's life, sorry. You don't have the blood for it. And even if you did, they die horribly too. Just more fashionably. Your home is a tiny, one-room cottage, shared with your extended family. And yes, shared. That includes your parents, siblings, maybe grandparents, and a chicken or two that got inside last night and decided to stay. There's no privacy. None. Changing clothes. What's that? Bathing. We'll get to that disaster later. You pull a scratchy wool blanket off yourself and try to sit up again. Bad idea. Your joints feel ancient, even though you're probably only 16. Maybe younger. In medieval records, age is vague. No one really knows how old they are unless they're nobility, and even then, it's a guessing game. If your birthday falls near a saint's day, congratulations, that's your birth date now. You glance around and realize your floor is dirt. Not like dirt. It is dirt. Actual compacted earth, occasionally swept with a broom made of tied twigs. There's straw scattered in the corners to soak up things. A few pots are lying around. One has soup in it. The other has waste. You hope you don't confuse them. And then, of course, there's the bucket. The one everyone used last night instead of going outside. Because it's cold. And wolves. And thieves. And who wants to wrestle with their trousers at midnight with a torch in one hand? The bucket doesn't get emptied every morning either. That's someone's job, but they forgot yesterday. Or maybe they just don't care. Which is fair. Life is already disgusting. You shuffle to the door. It creaks loudly, not because it's old, but because that's how medieval doors are built, rough, heavy, and slightly swollen from last night's rain. It opens directly to the outside, where there's no pavement, just mud. Everywhere. Mud and animal droppings and whatever your neighbors dumped from their own buckets. You carefully step over a puddle that might be water, might be something else. This is your front yard. A dozen identical houses, a few sheep bleating somewhere, and smoke curling lazily from chimneys. There's no clock, no calendar. The only time you know is, sun's up, or, sun's not up. And when the church bell rings, which it hasn't yet, you're already tired. You haven't done anything, and your body aches, your breath smells like something crawled in and died, and you vaguely remember coughing blood last night. But hey, so did your cousin. That's just how mornings go. Let's talk clothes. You're wearing a rough tunic, made of wool, dyed a vague brownish color with whatever plants grow nearby. There are holes in it. Of course. You don't have a closet full of options. You don't even have underwear. That's not a joke. Most peasants didn't. Just a tunic, maybe some leggings if you're lucky, and whatever your parents passed down when it stopped fitting them. And shoes. Not always. Some peasants worked barefoot, especially in summer. If you do have shoes, they're wooden clogs or stitched leather, poorly made and filled with straw. Your feet are wet before you've even walked 5 steps. A dog barks in the distance. Not the cute, fluffy kind. More like the, I might eat you if you die, kind. Pets weren't really pets. They were barely tolerated animals with jobs. Dogs for protection, cats for rats, chickens for eggs. All of them were just as likely to sleep inside your house as to drop dead outside from disease. They weren't named Fluffy, or Whiskers. More like brown dog, or that cat. As you start walking toward the village square, a familiar sound hits your ears, a sharp, hacking cough. Not yours this time. It's old Marjorie, your neighbor. She's been coughing for months. Probably won't make it through winter. But no one talks about it. Death is just part of the week. There's a historical debate about just how dirty medieval peasants were. Some scholars argue they were cleaner than we give them credit for, with regular face washing and occasional hair care. Others say, nah, they were filthy, especially by modern standards. You look down at your hands. Dirt under the nails. A strange green stain you don't remember getting. Yeah, you're not clean. Also, bathing. Forget it. It's not happening today. Or tomorrow. Maybe next month if you're lucky. You reach the well. It's the center of the village, surrounded by gossiping women, crying babies, and the local pig that somehow got loose again. Water is drawn up in wooden buckets, and everyone shares. Because plumbing. That's witchcraft. Literally. You drink straight from your hand, trying not to taste the metallic tang. It's not great. But it's better than dying of thirst. You think. You hope. Someone mentioned the well might be contaminated again, but hey, everyone's still drinking from it. You're already sweating. The sun isn't even high yet. Your tunic sticks to your back. Your feet are wet. Your stomach growls, but there's no food until someone starts a fire, and even then, it'll be more of the same. Bread. Gruel. If you're really lucky, a bit of cheese. Probably moldy. A rat scurries past your foot. You don't flinch. You're used to it. And that's just your first 5 minutes in medieval Europe. You already want to go back to bed. But you can't. You have chores, obligations, church, taxes, fieldwork. The smell is worse now that the air's warming. People around you are scratching themselves. A child cries because their only toy broke. Someone is yelling about a missing goat. You wonder how people lived like this for centuries. And the answer? Most of them didn't. You're still standing in the middle of the village square, trying not to breathe too deeply. But it's pointless. The smell hits you harder now, like a wall of everything that's ever rotted. It's not one smell. It's layers. First, there's the livestock. Sheep, pigs, and chickens roam freely, because fences are a luxury. And guess what animals do when they roam freely? They poop. Everywhere. That warm, pungent, animal stink is your village's natural perfume. It clings to your clothes. It's in your hair. It's probably in your soul at this point. Then there's the human waste, because remember that bucket from earlier? Yeah, every house has one. They're called chamber pots. And emptying them is a daily ritual for the unlucky. If you're polite, you take it out back and bury it or toss it in the designated waste pit. If you're everyone else, you just throw it out the window. No, really. It's called gonging. People literally yell, "Gardez-vous," meaning, watch out below, and hurl the contents into the street. Hope no one's walking by. Hope you're not walking by. There's no sewage system, no drains. The waste just sits, pools, mixes with the mud, especially during rain. And guess what? You live in England. It always rains. Some scholars argue that major towns had rudimentary drainage trenches, and yes, they did. But your village? Dirt roads, zero infrastructure, and puddles of mystery liquid that you've learned never to step in barefoot. Still, you're getting used to the background stench. That doesn't mean your nose likes it, it just means your brain gives up. Let's talk about body odor. Because it's everywhere. People don't bathe daily, or weekly. And when they do, it's a whole ordeal. Heat water over a fire, pour it into a giant wooden tub, and get in, with the rest of your family. Same water, same tub, in shifts. You're probably last. Enjoy the floaters. Soap is rare and expensive. So most people just scrub with a rough cloth, if that. Hair washing. Maybe with ashes or stale beer. Toothbrushing. Not a thing. People might chew mint leaves or use cloth to rub their gums, but cavities and missing teeth are the norm. You're lucky if your breath doesn't kill crops. People say, you get used to it. And you do. But not because it goes away. You get used to the smell like you get used to background noise. It's always there. You just stop reacting to it unless something new hits. And today, something new does hit. A cart rolls by, squeaking on its wooden wheels. It's covered in a thin sheet, but the smell escapes easily. A sickly sweet, rotting meat odor that turns your stomach. You know that smell. It's death. The man driving the cart doesn't speak. He just rings a small bell and mumbles something about the church graveyard. No one looks him in the eye. No one asks who died. Death is so regular here, people don't mourn, they rotate. That cart makes its rounds every few days. There's no refrigeration, no embalming, no dignity. If someone dies, they need to be buried fast, or they'll puff up and burst. Not exaggerating. It happens. In summer, even faster. You start walking again, trying to get away from the death cart and toward something, anything, that doesn't reek. You pass a baker's house. The smell of fresh bread slices through the rot like a miracle. It's the first good smell of the day. Warm, toasty, earthy. But then your stomach growls so hard it hurts, and you realize you can't afford the bread. You can't even afford the flour. You think about stealing it. Just a small roll. But you also think about what happened to the last thief. A shaved head, branded hand, and a week in the stocks while villagers threw literal poop at him. So, maybe not. And just as you're about to move on, another smell hits. Tanning. As in, leather making. It's the worst yet. The tanner lives near the edge of the village because the process is so foul even medieval people couldn't tolerate it. You smell it before you see it. Animal skins soaked in urine and rotting brains, yes, brains hung on racks to dry. Why? Because both pee and brains contain enzymes that help soften the hides. It's surprisingly effective. It's also unbearably vile. You wretch. No one notices. It happens all the time. That's when the church bell rings. Low and heavy. One slow boong to tell you it's time to pray. You don't have a choice. Skipping church is suspicious. Too suspicious, and people start asking if you're a heretic. Or a witch. You turn toward the church, your stomach churning, and as you pass old Marjorie's house again, her door is open. You glance in. She's still coughing, hunched over, and her bed is soaked with sweat. You wonder if she'll make it till sunset. You hope she does. Not because you like her, but because if she doesn't, someone has to carry her body out. And your name's on the rotation. You reach the church, its tall stone frame looming over the muddy village like a judgmental parent. People shuffle in, heads down, clothes stiff with dirt. The priest stands at the front in slightly cleaner robes and starts chanting in Latin, none of which you understand. You pretend to follow along. Everyone does. The incense is supposed to smell holy. But it mostly just blends into the background stench like everything else. And as you kneel on the cold stone floor, you suddenly realize your knees are bleeding. Again. From yesterday's fieldwork. And today hasn't even started yet. Church is over. Your knees are stiff, your back is sore, and you're not entirely sure you didn't fall asleep somewhere between the second and third Latin chant. But it doesn't matter. No one noticed. Half the congregation looked half dead anyway. Maybe they were. You step back into the village square, and it's already noisier. Chickens squawk, children cry, someone yells something about firewood, and a goat is trying to eat someone's laundry. A typical morning. But you still haven't used the toilet, and now, nature's calling. Loudly. Let's be clear. There is no toilet. There is no bathroom. There is no, excuse me, where's the restroom? Because the answer would be, wherever you can find a quiet patch of ground and a strong stomach. Your options are limited. If you're lucky, there's a small outhouse-style latrine behind your cottage. But it's not yours alone, it's shared with several families. It's a pit in the ground, surrounded by rotting wood boards, buzzing with flies, and covered in a smell so aggressive it feels like it might have claws. You head in that direction, holding your breath and trying not to gag. The door is hanging half off its hinge. There's no lock, no privacy, just a sad wooden plank with a hole cut into it. You stare at it, thinking of all the behinds that came before yours, and question every life decision you've made up until now, including watching this video, probably. You do what you came to do. Quickly. While keeping an eye out for rats. Or worse, someone who forgot to knock. No toilet paper, obviously. You use a handful of leaves, trying not to think about what plant they're from. The last guy picked stinging nettle by accident and walked funny for a week. Some folks used scraps of fabric, others used straw. The Romans had sponges on sticks reused, of course. In medieval Europe, anything goes. You leave the latrine feeling a strange combination of relieved and cursed. You are, in every sense of the word, not clean. And there's no hand-washing station. No faucet. No sink. You rub your hands on your tunic, which somehow makes them dirtier, and move on with your day. If you lived in a castle or a monastery, you might have access to a slightly more sophisticated setup. Maybe a garderobe, which is just a glorified hole in the wall that drops your business into the moat below. Charming, right? Just don't fall in. Scholars still argue whether the average medieval peasant understood the link between hygiene and disease. Some evidence suggests they knew bad smells weren't good, hence the use of herbs and perfumes, but actual germ theory was still centuries away. So people just assumed disease came from miasma, literally, bad air. Which, to be fair, medieval Europe had in abundance. After the latrine ordeal, you try to shake off the feeling and get back to your routine. You walk past a group of kids playing with sticks. One is coughing hard, the kind of cough that rattles in the chest and makes everyone pause. The others pretend not to notice. You do too. You've started to notice that everyone coughs. Not like a, got something in my throat, kind of cough, but a deep, wheezing kind of, I'm slowly dying, cough. You feel it in your own chest too. It's always there, low and lingering. You clear your throat, and a speck of blood appears on your palm. Not great, but not uncommon either. You don't tell anyone. What would they do? You think about going to the healer, but she's not cheap, and her remedies are questionable. Last time she gave someone a mixture of crushed snails and vinegar. Another time, she recommended tying a dead toad to a boil. So, maybe not today. Besides, you don't want to be labeled as weak. Or worse, contagious. Instead, you force yourself toward the fields. Work starts now. You're part of the majority of Europe's population that's involved in agriculture. And that doesn't mean you're living on a quiet farm with a view of rolling hills. No, it means you spend your day bending over in the dirt, with a wooden hoe, planting or digging or hauling, depending on the season. Today, it's hauling. Baskets of turnips. Because turnips grow well even in bad soil. And you eat them all the time. Raw, boiled, mashed. You'd kill for a potato, but they haven't been introduced yet. That's still a few centuries away. Too bad. You pass a group of women pounding grain with wooden mallets, their arms toned from endless repetition. A dog barks at your heels. Someone throws a rock at it. You keep walking. You reach the field and pick up a heavy basket. Your arms already ache. You take 2 steps, and your foot sinks into the mud. You curse under your breath, which is technically a sin, but no one's listening. Except God, who, according to every sermon, is always listening. As you haul the turnips across the field, your tunic sticks to your back. You're sweating again. The sun is up now, and the stink of the village is now mingling with the stink of hard labor. You smell like sheep, sweat, and anxiety. By noon, you're exhausted. You haven't had a full meal. You haven't had clean water. You haven't sat down in hours. Your hands are blistered. Your cough is worse. And you're still not done. You wonder, briefly, how long you could survive this. And the answer? Not long. There's a historical debate about whether medieval peasants were truly miserable or just used to it. Some scholars argue that people found joy in festivals, storytelling, and the occasional feast day. And that's true. But you're not on a feast day. You're on a Wednesday in the middle of turnip season, and your feet are soaked with mud and maybe blood. You take a short break, wiping your face with your sleeve. You sit on a stone, which feels like the best chair you've ever experienced. Your knees crack. Your back screams. You're not even 20. And you realize, this is your life. Every day. Until you get sick, or get accused of something, or a war passes through, or the winter gets too cold, or the Lord raises taxes, or you just stop waking up one morning. And still, you have to get back up. Because no one else is going to haul your turnips for you. You've made it to midday, and by some miracle, you're still standing. Barely. Your arms ache. Your knees wobble. Your shirt is soaked with sweat in some places, and in others, it's stiff with dried mud, or blood, or something else. You don't want to think about it. Your stomach is growling so loud it could be mistaken for a distant thunderstorm, and now it's time for the daily reward for your suffering, breakfast. Except, in medieval Europe, breakfast isn't what you think it is. It's not eggs and toast. It's not oatmeal and fruit. It's not even warm. It's a crust of stale bread and maybe some thin ale, if you're lucky. And yes, you're drinking ale. In the morning. Because the water might kill you. This is your moment of pause. You squat on a rock near the edge of the field, pull the hunk of bread from your satchel, a rough brown chunk, dense as a brick, and stare at it like it owes you something. You knock it against the stone to test its softness. It makes a clink sound. Still edible. Probably. You bite in, and your teeth scream in protest. The crust is rock hard, the inside slightly damp and suspiciously sour. There's something moving in it. Yep. Weevils. Tiny beetles, baked right in. Protein. You keep chewing. Slowly. Carefully. You wash it down with a few gulps of the small beer, brewed weak and cloudy. It's not really alcohol as you know it. Just enough to kill the bacteria in the water and give you a dull buzz. Enough to keep the plague at bay. Or so you hope. The drink tastes like old bread, wet socks, and a hint of vinegar. But it's cold, and it doesn't make you sick, so you thank the heavens and sip again. And then, because apparently the universe enjoys messing with you, you spot someone else's meal out of the corner of your eye. They're from a slightly wealthier family. Their bread is newer. Their portion larger. They have cheese. And not the crusty, dried out rind kind you sometimes get once a month. Actual, soft cheese. Yellow. Creamy. Possibly stolen from a noble's kitchen. You're not proud of it, but your stomach actually growls louder at the sight. This is medieval food envy in action. But it's not like you're going to rob them. You just keep chewing your bug bread and imagine the taste of cheese melting on your tongue. It helps. A little. Someone nearby pulls out a few boiled onions from a cloth sack and offers you half. You nod your thanks and take it. The onion is cold, slimy, and kind of spicy, but it's the best thing you've eaten all week. This is your life. A random onion equals highlight of the day. And if you're wondering, why don't you just cook something better? The answer is simple, you can't. For one, you don't have ingredients. Meat is rare. Vegetables are seasonal. Fruit is mostly dried or fermented. You don't have salt, at least not in any usable amount, and spices. That's for the royals. You might as well ask for a spaceship. Second, cooking requires fuel. Wood, charcoal, dried dung, if you're desperate. You can't afford to burn that for fun. Fire is precious, fire is expensive, and fire is dangerous. One stray spark and the whole village could go up like a haystack. So most meals are cold, repetitive, and bland. Bread, ale, maybe some boiled greens. If it's winter, maybe gruel, which is a polite word for watered down sadness. Sometimes you get lucky and there's a stew going. A big communal pot. Everyone throws something in. A carrot here, a bone there, a handful of wilted herbs. What comes out is edible. Barely. But it's hot, and in medieval Europe, hot food is a luxury. There's an old peasant saying, cold bread is better than no bread. And you agree with that. Until you break a tooth on a chunk of rye. Let's pause here for a quirky historical side note. In many medieval households, bread wasn't just food, it was a plate. Literally, thick slabs of stale bread, called trenchers, were used to hold food. At the end of the meal, the bread, now soggy with grease and stew, was either eaten or fed to the dogs. Fair or given to the poor charity, sort of. And yes, sometimes people ate off the same trenchers. With their hands. Because forks didn't exist for peasants. Spoons. Maybe. Knives. Shared. You finish your bread slowly, partly because it's hard to chew, and partly because it's the last real thing you'll eat today. Maybe tomorrow too. And as you wipe your hands on your already filthy tunic, you realize something's crawling on your forearm. A flea. You squash it reflexively. Then you see another. And another. And another. Yep. You're infested. Welcome to the club. Fleas are just part of life here. Everyone has them. You don't even itch anymore unless you think about it. Lice, too. Bedbugs. Ticks. Your whole body is a mobile buffet for parasites, and there's nothing you can do. There are no baths. No soap. No pest control. The most you can do is rub vinegar on your scalp and pray. Sometimes people shave their heads entirely and wear cloth caps to hide the baldness and the shame. You think about it. Maybe next week. You stretch your legs and stand up, ready to head back to work. Your stomach still aches from hunger, but you're technically full. Or at least no longer dying. That's the best you can hope for. Someone walks by holding a skinned rabbit on a stick. You inhale deeply. It smells like heaven. Burnt hair and all. You wonder what it would take to have meat again. Real meat. Not salted pork scraps. Not old bones boiled for hours. Not dried fish so tough it cracks your jaw. Fresh meat. Then you remember. The last guy who tried poaching from the Lord's forest got caught. They cut off his hand. So maybe just enjoy the memory of that one chicken you had last spring and move on. You sigh. Your back cracks. You trudge back toward the fields, the muddy path squelching under your feet. It's not even 2 p.m. The sun is high now, and it's stopped being warm and cozy. It's just hot. There's no hat to shield you. No sunscreen. No sunglasses. Your skin's already red where it's exposed, and you know by nightfall, it'll peel or blister, or worse, get infected. But you keep moving. Because you have to. The work never ends. You haul another basket of turnips, heavy, damp, and vaguely slimy. You can feel your lower back tightening with every step. Not in a, you should stretch, kind of way. More like a, you might never stand up straight again, kind of way. And here's the thing. This isn't punishment. This is normal. For a medieval peasant, life is work. From sunrise to sunset. No weekends. No holidays. Unless it's a saint's day, and even then, the church might still make you do fieldwork as penance. You don't own this land. You don't even rent it. You're tied to it. In legal terms, you're probably a serf, which means you technically belong to the land itself. You can't leave without permission. You can't marry who you want. You can't take up another job. You're not a slave, exactly, but you're close. You stop to catch your breath near a rickety wooden fence. The wood is splintered and sagging, but it's the only thing separating you from the Lord's property. And crossing it without his say-so. That's not just rude, it's illegal. You glance toward the manor in the distance. It's not a castle, just a big, fortified house made of stone with a thatched roof and actual windows, glass, even. A real status symbol. The Lord doesn't do fieldwork. He gives orders, collects rents, enforces taxes, sends people off to war. You, on the other hand, break your back harvesting his crops so you can keep living in your own house. Seems fair. And just when you're thinking it can't get any worse, a horn blows from somewhere down the path. Loud, sharp, the kind of sound that makes everyone freeze for half a second. You turn toward it, squinting through the haze of heat, and see a messenger riding through the village. Horse muddy, cloak tattered, face serious. He dismounts near the church and unrolls a scroll. Here it comes. By order of the crown, he begins. Everyone in earshot groans. It's always bad news. Higher taxes. New tithes. Another royal marriage. Or worse. All able-bodied men must report for military levy in 1 week's time. Service to be rendered under the local lord for the king's campaign in the south. Failure to comply will result in forfeiture of land and property. There it is. You're going to war. Or at least, your name's going in the pot. Every village must send a certain number of men when summoned. And since there are only so many of you here, yeah, you're probably going. The irony is, this might be your only chance to leave. To see more than your field, your cottage, and the back of old Marjorie's greasy head. But you don't get excited. Because most peasants who go to war don't come back. Or if they do, they come back missing a piece of themselves. An arm, an eye, a soul. You've heard the stories. Some of the older men in the village fought in the last campaign. They don't talk about it much, but you've seen the scars. One of them screams in his sleep. Every night. The others just drink and stare into space. And here's the kicker. You won't be trained. You won't get armor. Maybe a helmet, if you're lucky. Definitely a stick. Maybe a spear. And you'll be thrown into the mud with 100 other terrified farmers against knights with swords longer than your arm. Glory. Not in your tax bracket. You watch the messenger ride off and the village slowly returns to its rhythm. Your breath is shallow now. The idea of war clings to your skin like sweat. You wipe your face and get back to work, because what else can you do? Eventually, you finish your turnip run. Just in time to get assigned a new task. The wood pile is low. You'll need to go collect firewood. Which means heading to the forest. You grab a rope and a dull axe and start walking, alone this time. It's a short walk, but it feels long. Every step squishes in the mud, and your feet are raw from the clogs rubbing against your skin. You're pretty sure your heel is bleeding again. The path to the woods is narrow and lined with bushes. You see a rabbit dart through the underbrush. Tempting. But the woods are technically the Lord's property. You're only allowed to take fallen branches. No hunting. No cutting down trees. No fire starting. No berry picking without permission. Last winter, a family got caught collecting extra wood. The punishment? A public flogging. The father didn't walk right for a month. The kid couldn't even cry. His back was too torn up. So yeah, you only take what you're allowed. The woods are quiet. Too quiet. And now you're remembering the other stories. Bandits. Wolves. Wildmen. Spirits. Depending on who you ask, the woods are either a gift from God or a gateway to hell. You just want to grab some branches and leave. You gather what you can. Dry twigs, a few thicker limbs, and start binding them with your rope. It's heavy, awkward, and pokes your legs as you walk, but at least you're done. Almost. Halfway back to the village, you pass by the stocks, the wooden punishment frame in the village square. And today, someone's in them. It's Thomas, the blacksmith's son. You ask someone what happened. He was caught blaspheming. Said something rude about the priest's sermon. Someone overheard. Someone told. Now he's sitting in the stocks, wrists and ankles locked in place, while people walk by and throw things. Mostly vegetables. Sometimes worse. You keep walking. Because if you stop too long, someone might accuse you of something. In this village, gossip is lethal. It's how people get labeled as thieves. Or heretics. Or witches. Especially if you're different. Too quiet. Too clever. Too unlucky. You pass old Marjorie's house again. Her door is closed now. You don't know if that's a good sign. By the time you're back home, the sun is low. The air smells of smoke and cooked onions. Someone's making stew. You tie up the firewood near the hearth, and your mother nods in approval. A rare moment of peace. Then you hear someone outside yell something about the rats again. Followed by a loud clattering noise. Another normal evening in the medieval dreamscape. You lie down on your sack of straw and close your eyes. Tomorrow, it starts all over again. And you're still alive. For now. You wake up the next morning to the sound of a rooster doing its best horror movie impression. The sun isn't up yet, but it doesn't matter. The day has started. And you're already behind. You sit up and immediately regret it. Your back creaks like an old church door. Your legs are sore. Your hands, a patchwork of calluses, blisters, and dirt. You scratch your neck, and a flea jumps off. Probably the same one from yesterday. You make a mental note to give it a name. Maybe, regret. You shuffle to the door, push it open, and breathe in the fresh morning air. Except, it's not fresh. It's the same blend of manure, smoke, unwashed humanity, and possibly a dead bird somewhere nearby. Still, the sky is pink, and there's a light mist curling around the village huts like a shy ghost. It's almost pretty, if you squint and hold your breath. But before you can pretend to enjoy the moment, you hear shouting. From the square, you hobble over, still wiping crust from your eyes, and there they are, the tax collectors. You knew they were coming. You just didn't know it'd be today. They ride in on horseback, two of them, cloaked in rough wool, with grim expressions and tiny parchment scrolls. One holds a tally sheet. The other carries a club. Neither of them looks particularly empathetic. They dismount in the middle of the square, and the one with the scroll starts reading off names. Loudly. You don't want to be on that list. But you probably are. Every peasant owes a portion of their harvest, their livestock, or in your case, your life force. You've already given your turnips to the Lord's steward. But it's never enough. When they call your name, you step forward. Head low, eyes down. You hand over a handful of copper coins, most of which you begged, borrowed, or hoped wouldn't be missed. The collector examines the coins, bites one dramatically, then sneers. You're short. Your stomach tightens. You mumble something about the poor yield, the frost, the rats, your sick goat, whatever you can think of. The man with the club shifts his weight. After a long pause, the tax collector sighs and marks something on his scroll. 2 extra days of labor. On the Lord's road crew. Just like that, you've been drafted into public works. And that means goodbye to your already pitiful free time. Goodbye to working on your own thatch roof, or repairing your door, or, God forbid, resting. You nod, grateful not to be whipped. Ashamed anyway. The next name is called. Someone didn't show. They'll regret it. Let's take a step back and talk about medieval taxes, because yes, they're worse than modern ones, and that's saying something. You're taxed by the Lord, the church, and the crown. Sometimes all at once. Here's a sampler of what you owe, just for existing. Tithe. 10% of your crops go to the church. Yes, even the moldy ones. Feudal dues. Work on the Lord's land for free several days a week. That's not optional. Head tax. Just a fee for being a human being. Marriage fee. Want to marry someone from another village? Pay up. Mortuary fee. When you die, part of your estate goes to the church. As a goodbye gift, apparently. War tax. If there's a battle coming, and there's always a battle coming, someone has to pay for it. And in return, you get protection. Kind of. If bandits attack or disease spreads, you might get a prayer. Maybe a locked gate. That's about it. Scholars still debate how much taxation contributed to peasant revolts across Europe. Some argue it was the spark, others the fuel. But if you ask your aching, overworked body right now, it feels like both. After the tax collectors ride off, leaving a trail of angry mutters and empty coin pouches, you start your assigned labor shift on the Lord's road. Which is a joke, because road is being generous. It's a muddy trail full of holes, tree roots, and the occasional lost boot. Your job: dig a ditch on the side. Fill it with rocks. Try not to die. You work alongside other peasants, none of whom are thrilled to be here. A few older men grumble about blisters. One girl swears she saw a leech in her boot. Another just mutters, "This stupid road goes nowhere," over and over. You're handed a shovel. The handle is splintered, the metal is dull, and it smells like goat for some reason. You dig anyway. The ditch is supposed to help drain water during rain. But since it's already half full of mud and frogs, you doubt it'll make a difference. You dig, and dig, and dig. Then, your shovel hits something hard. You stop. Curious. You clear some of the mud away. It's a bone. Not a chicken bone. A human one. The others gather around. One of them mutters a prayer. Another says this place used to be an old battlefield. Someone else says it's cursed. The local priest is called. He arrives, says a few Latin words, sprinkles something that smells like cabbage, and declares it fine. You keep digging. Hours pass. By the time you're done, your hands are shaking. Your back feels like it's made of glass. And your stomach is so empty it might echo. You return home just as the sun dips behind the trees. You're greeted by your neighbor's chicken pecking at your door. Inside, it's dark, smoky, and still warmer than outside. You collapse onto your straw mat. No dinner today. You're too tired to cook, and there's nothing to cook anyway. You lie there, staring at the thatched ceiling, listening to the crackle of the dying fire. And the scratching. There are rats in the roof again. They run back and forth above your head, like tiny burglars doing laps. You try to ignore it. But one of them loses its footing and falls onto the floor with a soft thud. It scurries away, but not before you lock eyes with it. You both look tired. You both live here. You roll over and cough, deep and rough. Your lungs are filled with dust and dampness and something heavier. You don't know what day it is anymore. Only that tomorrow will be worse. But you close your eyes. Because there's nothing else to do. And somehow, that's the scariest part. Morning comes again, slow and reluctant, like a hangover you didn't ask for. The rooster's crow isn't quite enough to pull you fully awake, but the chill in the air certainly helps. Your breath puffs out in little clouds as you sit up, feeling every ache and pain in your body like a reminder you're still very much alive. Or at least surviving. You peek outside, and the village is stirring. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, and you hear the faint calls of merchants setting up their stalls in the market square. Today is market day, and for a moment, a spark of hope flickers inside you. Maybe, just maybe, you can trade something useful. You grab what little you have. a few eggs, a small sack of barley, and an old wooden spoon you found last month, and head toward the square. The market is a chaotic swirl of colors, sounds, and smells. Vendors shout about their wares, children dart between legs, and livestock bleat from cramped pens. You weave through the crowd, your eyes scanning for familiar faces or anything worth trading. This is your chance to barter. But bartering in medieval Europe is a delicate dance. Money is scarce for people like you. Coins are precious and often clipped or counterfeit. So, you trade goods or services instead. A sack of barley for a chicken. A few eggs for a loaf of bread. A favor for a tool. You find a merchant selling salt, a valuable commodity, essential for preserving food but often out of reach for peasants. You approach cautiously, hoping to trade your eggs for a pinch. The merchant eyes you like you're a rat. Eggs won't cut it, he says, folding his arms. Got anything else? You shake your head. Salt is luxury. You might as well ask for gold. While you haggle, your gaze drifts to a group of traveling minstrels setting up nearby. They carry strange instruments and sing songs of distant lands and heroic knights. Their music is lively, almost magical, a sharp contrast to your dull, grueling life. You listen for a moment, letting the melodies wash over you. For a brief second, you're not a poor peasant worrying about survival. You're someone else, maybe a noble at a grand feast, laughing and dancing. Then a sudden shout pulls you back. Pickpocket! Someone yells. Chaos erupts. The crowd parts as a young boy darts through, clutching a purse. You freeze, heart pounding, watching as a merchant grabs the boy by the collar and drags him to the stocks. Justice in medieval villages is swift and public, and often brutal. That scene lingers in your mind as you make your way back home. Market day is a stark reminder of the thin line you walk every day, between survival and desperation. Back in your hut, the evening brings a rare treat. A visit from the village healer, an old woman with herbs and stories. She offers you a cup of herbal tea made from nettles and wild mint, claiming it will ease your aching body. You sip cautiously. It's bitter, but comforting. She tells you of recent rumors, a strange illness spreading nearby. Fever, coughing, death. You shiver, not just from the chill but from the weight of the news. Disease is a constant threat. Plague, dysentery, smallpox, they don't discriminate. The healer warns you to stay clean as possible, boil water if you can, and avoid crowds. Good luck with that. As night falls, you lie down again, the herbal warmth fading, and the village's sounds lull you into a restless sleep. Tomorrow will bring more work, more hunger, more hardship. But for now, just for a moment, you close your eyes and dream of a different life. You wake to a sky streaked with gray, the chill deeper today. There's a heavy silence over the village, a quiet that presses down on you. Something's wrong. The healer's warnings echo in your mind. And now, as you step outside, you see why. A man stumbles down the lane, coughing harshly, skin pale and clammy. Behind him, others follow, faces drawn tight with fear and sickness. The word spreads quickly. Plague. No one knows where it came from. Maybe traders, maybe rats, maybe the cursed woods. Doesn't matter. It's here, and it's deadly. You're not immune, of course. The village elder calls a meeting in the square, voices hushed but urgent. They speak of quarantines, prayers, and herbal remedies. But mostly, they speak of fear. Because nobody really knows how to fight this invisible enemy. You watch as neighbors close their doors, children stop playing, and the streets empty out. It's like the village is holding its breath. You try to keep working, but your hands tremble. Every cough nearby sounds like a death sentence. You realize survival here isn't just about food or labor. It's about avoiding the unseen killers lurking in the air, on the clothes, even in the water. Scholars still argue whether medieval plagues spread mainly through fleas, rats, or human contact. What you know is what you see. people dying, fast and without mercy. The healer comes again, this time with stronger potions, warnings to isolate the sick, and strange rituals meant to ward off evil spirits. You watch the village's heart beat slower and slower. The plague doesn't care if you're innocent, hardworking, or just trying to live. It doesn't care if you're a lord or a serf. It just takes. By nightfall, you're exhausted, anxious, and wondering if you'll wake tomorrow at all. You close your eyes and try to hold on to hope, because in medieval Europe, hope is as precious as gold. The days blur together as the plague tightens its grip on your village. Every morning, you step outside and see fewer familiar faces. The once bustling lanes now feel like ghost streets, the silence interrupted only by the occasional cough or the distant toll of the church bell. The bell rings to mark the dead, a grim, haunting rhythm echoing through the empty alleys. You try to avoid contact, but it's impossible. Your neighbors are family, your friends, and the fear of contagion wraps around you like a suffocating shroud. You notice signs you never paid attention to before: black swellings on the skin, fevers that make people delirious, bruises turning purple. You've heard the term Black Death. It's a name that doesn't just describe the symptoms but the creeping darkness engulfing your world. There's no medicine, no cure, only superstition and desperation. People turn to priests for salvation and to healers for herbs. Some whisper of witches causing the plague, and others say it's divine punishment. The village erupts in arguments, accusations, and sometimes violence. One night, you witness a terrifying scene. A woman accused of witchcraft is dragged through the square, her screams echoing as a crowd hurls stones. You realize that in times of terror, reason often falls silent. You try to keep your wits, to keep your family safe. You burn herbs in your hut, avoid gatherings, and pray quietly in the dark. Still, the plague claims more victims. You bury the dead yourself, shoveling dirt over bodies wrapped in linen, faces peaceful but empty. The earth absorbs their secrets as you wonder if your name will be on the list next. Survival feels like a gamble where the odds are stacked against you. Amid this horror, you remember the stories of medieval doctors wearing bizarre masks with bird-like beaks stuffed with herbs, an odd and eerie attempt to keep the plague at bay. Scholars still debate how effective these early plague doctors really were, but their image has become an icon of the age. You imagine wearing such a mask, walking through your village, trying to help yet powerless. As the night deepens, you clutch your worn blanket tighter and try to push the creeping dread away. Because to live here, in medieval Europe, means facing the darkness every day, hoping your light doesn't flicker out. The plague finally fades, leaving behind a village hollowed by loss and silence. But survival doesn't mean relief. No, it means the beginning of new struggles. With so many dead, fields lie fallow and livestock wander without care. The Lord's demands don't stop for disease. If anything, they grow harsher to cover lost revenue. You find yourself working harder than ever, trying to scrape together enough to feed the survivors. The social order feels fragile. Peasants whisper of revolt, sensing that the old system is cracking. Some see opportunity, others fear chaos. Your life teeters between desperation and fragile hope. Your hands are raw from toil, but your eyes scan the horizon, searching for any sign of change. The village healer returns, scarred and weary, warning of lingering sickness and the need to rebuild. You hear rumors of new laws, new taxes, new masters. Yet amid it all, the stars still wheel overhead, indifferent. And you wonder if you'll last another day in this relentless medieval world. The village wakes to a new kind of struggle. With so many lives lost, the land feels empty, ghostly in its quiet. Fields that once thrived now sit neglected, weeds creeping where crops should grow. The lords, desperate to hold on to power, tighten their grip even more, demanding heavier labor and increased taxes from the fewer peasants left. You notice the once lively market is subdued, with fewer faces and thinner wares. Bartering becomes tougher. goods are scarcer, and hunger claws harder. The people you see walk slower, shoulders heavy with grief and exhaustion. Work feels endless, hours spent repairing fences, plowing fields, and rebuilding homes. You try to steal moments of rest, but they're rare, slipping away like sand through your fingers. Sleep brings dreams filled with shadows, whispers of those you lost, and fears of what tomorrow might bring. There's talk among the villagers of rebellion, whispers carried on the wind about rising up against the lords. You listen carefully, knowing that such thoughts could lead to swift and brutal punishment. Still, the hunger and sorrow plant dangerous seeds in many hearts. Amid the toil, you cling to small comforts. The warmth of a fire, the taste of stale bread, the quiet moments under a cold sky. You remind yourself that surviving another day, in this world of hardship and fear, is a victory in itself. The seasons turn slowly, and with them, the rhythms of your life grow harsher. Winters bite deeper, summers scorch without mercy, and the land itself seems to conspire against you. Crops fail, livestock dwindle, and the threat of famine hangs heavy in the air like a dark cloud. You wake one morning to find your neighbor's hut smoldering, burned down in a suspicious fire. Rumors spread quickly that desperation has turned neighbor against neighbor, that some are stealing what little others have. Trust frays like old rope, snapping under the strain of survival. Your own family tightens its belt, sharing what little food remains and patching clothes threadbare from years of wear. The Lord's tax collectors come again, their faces stern as they demand grain you don't have and labor you cannot spare. The local priest offers prayers, blessings, and promises of salvation, none of which fill empty stomachs or heal broken backs. Still, you press on. You learn to read the skies and the land's subtle signs, when the rain will come, when frost will strike. This knowledge feels like a fragile shield against the cruel whims of nature. You share whispered stories with others, tales of old gods and new hopes. Sometimes laughter bubbles up in the darkest moments, a reminder that even in despair, life stubbornly insists on continuing. Scholars debate how much medieval people believed in divine punishment versus natural causes for their suffering. For you, though, the line blurs, it's all entwined, a tapestry of fear and faith. As night falls, you lie awake, muscles aching and heart heavy, wondering how much longer this relentless cycle can go on. The village is alive again, though not in the way you might hope. A constant buzz of whispers, gossip, and suspicion threads through the air like smoke from the chimneys. Fear lingers, not just of disease or famine, but of the unknown and the unexplained. Rumors of witches and sorcery spread like wildfire. Strange events are blamed on those who stand out. The healer with her herbs, the quiet woman who talks to animals, the old man who never attends church. People clutch their crosses tighter, casting nervous glances at their neighbors. You feel it too, a cold shiver when the wind shifts, a prickling on your skin when someone watches you too long. The village seems to hold its breath, waiting for the next calamity. One evening, a young girl disappears. The villagers gather, panic rising. Accusations fly. The healer is questioned harshly, the priest calls for prayer, and the Lord's men patrol the streets with torches. You help search the woods, heart pounding with fear and hope. The girl is found days later, disoriented but alive. The relief is fleeting, the tension remains. This climate of suspicion often erupts into violence. Trials for witchcraft, public punishments, and fear-driven witch hunts are common. You know well that even a hint of difference can be deadly. Still, life must go on. You tend to your chores, navigate the watchful eyes of neighbors, and try to keep your head down. But in the back of your mind, you wonder how much longer this fragile peace can hold before it shatters. Your body aches with every sunrise, worn thin by years of relentless toil. The sun beats down mercilessly, the cold bites through your ragged clothing, and the seasons continue their cruel march. Yet, you push on. Because giving up means certain death. Food is scarce, medicine scarcer. When sickness strikes, you have little but prayers and crude remedies to lean on. Your neighbors fall ill, some never to rise again. The village cemetery grows, a silent testament to the fragility of life in medieval Europe. At night, you hear the distant howls of wolves, reminders that even nature is hostile here. Livestock is stolen or slaughtered by beasts, leaving you with even less to survive on. The social order tightens like a noose. Lords grow more demanding, peasants more desperate. Disputes over land, water, and rights flare up, sometimes turning violent. You witness a public flogging, harsh punishment for a minor theft. Fear is the law's shadow. Yet, amid all this, you find brief moments of humanity. A shared meal with a neighbor, a child's laughter breaking the gloom, a soft song sung under the stars. These are the fragile threads holding your world together. You realize survival isn't just about resisting death, it's about clinging to hope, to connection, to the small joys that remind you you're still alive. Scholars still argue how peasants maintained resilience in such brutal conditions. For you, it's now, after everything, the harsh days, the long nights, the endless struggles, you find yourself at a crossroads. The medieval world around you is unforgiving, a relentless cycle of hardship and survival. Yet, here you are, still standing, still breathing. You glance back at the journey you've endured. The hunger that gnawed at your bones, the diseases that swept through your village like a shadow, the cold that bit through your skin, and the fear that clung to your every step. You've seen cruelty and kindness, despair and hope, pain and resilience, all intertwined like the roots of an ancient tree. You realize something profound. Surviving in medieval Europe wasn't about strength alone. It was about adaptability, community, and the stubborn will to live despite all odds. Every day was a battle, every small victory a triumph. The world may have moved on since then, but the echoes remain, reminders of what life once was and the extraordinary endurance of those who lived it. So as you lie down tonight, feel the weight of history settle around you. Let the quiet whispers of the past soothe your restless mind. You probably wouldn't last a day in medieval Europe, but maybe, just maybe, you can carry a piece of its story with you. Please share this video with dear. Subscribe our YouTube channel The Best Way of Sleeping.